I pulled into the driveway that morning, my car crunching over the gravel, and immediately felt something was off. The house was quiet, darker than usual, and the scent of last night's dinner had long faded. I called out, "Mom! Dad! Sophia?" My voice echoed against the walls, unanswered. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Then I saw it. A note lying on the kitchen counter, written in Mom's familiar looping handwriting. I picked it up, hands trembling. It read, "Holly, we just wanted to keep you busy. You've been asking too many questions about our finances, and we needed you focused elsewhere. The party you planned? Forget it. We're in Paris with Sophia for her birthday. Don't be upset, it's nothing personal. Love, Mom and Dad." I read it twice, then a third time, hoping my eyes were lying to me. The words burned into my mind. I had spent 6 months, every free night and weekend, planning what I thought would be my sister's perfect sweet 16, and it was all a lie. I sank onto a chair, gripping the note so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded with a mixture of betrayal, shock, and humiliation. They went to Paris? Without telling me? I whispered to myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Hope you don't mind, honey. Surprise trip for Sophia." No one mentioned me. My parents, my sister, even my extended family were smiling on Instagram photos at Charles de Gaulle Airport, champagne in hand, banners reading Sophia's Sweet 16 Paris Adventure. I felt like the world had flipped upside down, and I was left behind, staring at the ruins of my own work. I remembered the weeks of planning. I had spent hours negotiating with caterers, DJs, and photographers, even hiring a balloon artist who specialized in celebrity events. I had researched venues, taste-tested menus, and coordinated flower arrangements down to the exact number of roses. I had taken 3 weeks off from my marketing job to devote myself entirely to this project. I had even shelled out $8,000 from my savings to secure deposits because Mom insisted, "We'll reimburse you later, just cover it now." And they had used it all, every single cent, without so much as a thank you. I got up, trying to steady myself, and walked through the empty house, imagining Sophia dancing in the grand Riverside Hotel ballroom I had booked. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead in my mind's eye, tables draped in blush linens, every balloon in place. And it was all gone. Every phone call, every late-night email, every meeting with vendors. They had been playing me. I slammed the note onto the counter and muttered aloud, "How could they do this? How could they plan this just to keep me busy?" The thought made my chest tighten. They weren't just careless, they were manipulative. My mind raced back to the subtle signs over the past few months. New cars, kitchen renovations, vacations they never mentioned paying for, whispered phone calls I had caught. I had noticed the bills piling up and tried to ask gently, "Are you guys okay financially?" Dad's response had been clipped. "Mind your own business, Holly. We're fine." And now I knew. They had lied to me for months, using my concern as a distraction. I sank back into the chair, staring at the floor, tasting betrayal like bitter iron on my tongue. I wanted to scream, to cry, but all I could do was breathe and think. My 6 months of relentless planning, my money, my time, my emotional energy, they had all been used as pawns in their scheme. And Sophia? She had barely looked up from her phone during the planning meetings, indifferent, oblivious, maybe even complicit in this cruel setup. I finally stood, pulling out my phone and dialing the florist. "Marcus?" "Yes, it's Holly. I need to cancel everything. The party isn't happening. There's been a family emergency." His voice fell, concerned. I didn't have the energy to explain more. The betrayal was too deep. I ended the call and exhaled sharply. The entire ballroom, all the decorations, the vendors. It had been my 6 months of life stolen, and now I was left to pick up the pieces and figure out what to do next. And yet, beneath the shock and humiliation, something else began to burn. A slow, cold fire of anger, clarity, and resolve. They had thought they could deceive me. They had thought they could humiliate me and get away with it. They were about to find out that I wasn't just the girl who plans parties. I was someone who noticed, someone who remembered, and someone who would not be so easily used again. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, the weight of it pressing down like a vice. The note from Mom had been cruel enough, but as I sat in my apartment, staring at the blank wall, I realized the scope of what I had just uncovered might be far worse. I started retracing every transaction, every loan, every favor I had done for them over the past 5 years. My stomach churned. The more I thought, the angrier I became. I logged into my bank account first. Every deposit, every transfer I had made to their accounts for tuition, car repairs, and home emergencies. I had receipts, screenshots, emails. I felt a small surge of control holding that evidence in my hands. But even as I cataloged the numbers, a cold realization settled in. They hadn't just borrowed money. They had forged my signature on loans totaling $45,000. My credit history, the financial identity I had carefully built, was now under their thumb, and 2 of those loans were already in default. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I whispered, "They actually did this. They actually did this." Next, I started calling the vendors. The caterer, the florist, the photographer, the balloon artist. I needed confirmation. Each call made the betrayal sting more vividly. Each voice on the other end said the same thing. My parents had contacted them weeks ago, claiming the party was canceled and that they had already paid their portion of the deposits, asking for refunds. In reality, it was I who had covered it all, nearly $20,000 in total, money I had painstakingly saved and budgeted. I could almost hear the laughter from that group chat I hadn't seen yet, and my stomach sank further. I sank into the chair, running my hands over my face, taking in the numbers. $87,000 over the past 5 years, all the money I had lent or spent for them, unreturned, combined with the deposits and fraudulent vendor refunds. It all added up to a staggering amount. The pattern was clear. This wasn't a simple family misunderstanding. This was deliberate, systematic, and deeply personal. They had planned it to manipulate me, to distract me from asking questions, to punish me for caring about their financial recklessness. I felt the need for professional help immediately. I called Rachel, my college roommate, and now a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud. "Rachel, I think they've been defrauding me," I said, voice low but tense. She didn't flinch. "Show me everything. Now," she said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp, scanning me as if measuring how serious this was. I sent her all the images, all the receipts, screenshots of texts, and emails documenting my payments over the years. She leaned back and let out a slow breath. "Holly, this is serious," she said. "Identity theft, forgery, fraud. This isn't just family drama. They're committing crimes, and you have proof." Her words landed like heavy stones, cold and concrete. I nodded, trying to feel the weight of what she said without letting panic take over. "What can I do?" I asked. She outlined the steps: file police reports, alert the credit bureaus, contact the banks, document every interaction, and prepare civil litigation. Every detail she listed made my head spin, but at the same time, a strange clarity emerged. I wasn't helpless. I spent the next few hours methodically photographing every document, cataloging emails, screenshots, bank transfers, and even the paperwork for the fraudulent loans. I created spreadsheets, timelines, and lists, each item a brick in the wall I was building between them and my financial life. My hands shook as I looked at the sheer scale of their deception, but with each click of the camera, I felt a small surge of empowerment. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was preparing to fight back. Later, I sat in the quiet of my living room, the city lights flickering through the blinds, and felt something else creeping in beneath the anger. Fear of confrontation mixed with anticipation. Every time I thought of Mom, Dad, and Sophia enjoying Paris, oblivious to the storm I was building at home, my chest tightened. But I also realized I had a plan now. I had evidence, I had legal guidance, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of control. The betrayal was personal, yes, but so would be my response. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "I'm not letting them get away with this. Not this time." And with that, I started drafting a timeline of every transaction, every phone call, every detail of their deceit, ready to lay it all bare. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about standing up for myself, protecting my life and identity, and making them accountable. And I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't stop until they faced the consequences. The day they returned from Paris, I stayed in my apartment, pacing, my hands curling and uncurling around my phone. I knew they'd come back eventually, and I knew they'd expect things to be normal. But nothing was normal anymore. I wasn't that naive daughter who could be manipulated by a note on the counter. I had evidence, strategy, and a legal plan, and I was ready to use all of it. It didn't take long for Rachel to confirm that all filings were in order. civil suit, fraud claims, and credit disputes. The paperwork was airtight. I could almost feel their anticipation, though they had no idea what they were walking into. When my phone buzzed, it was Dad calling repeatedly. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed to control the situation on my terms. Court day arrived brisk and clear. Sacramento sunlight filtered through the courthouse windows as I walked in, my navy suit crisp, my posture tight with purpose. Rachel met me at the door, glancing sideways. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, clutching my folder of documents so tightly my knuckles whitened. My heart thumped, but I felt a calm determination settle over me, cold and focused. Inside the courtroom, my parents were seated, their faces weary but smug, as if they thought I would crumble under familial pressure. But I didn't. Rachel stood, presenting every piece of evidence: bank statements, receipts, emails, and screenshots proving all loans were real obligations, plus documentation of the forged signatures. The judge listened intently, occasionally raising her brow, flipping through the exhibits. I could feel my pulse in my ears, each beat reinforcing the weight of their deception. Dad's lawyer tried to argue that some of the money had been gifts. "She gave it willingly," he said, voice measured but strained. Rachel countered with precision, her voice clear and sharp. "Willingness doesn't erase obligation. Promises to repay are legally binding. The plaintiff has documented proof of repayment agreements over 5 years, plus evidence of forgery and financial manipulation." The judge nodded, flipping through the organized packet of evidence I had spent hours compiling. When the decision came, my stomach clenched. The court ruled in my favor. My parents were ordered to pay $2,000 per month until the full $95,000 was repaid, including the party deposits and prior loans. They had to remove my name from any loan or financial documentation fraudulently signed, and cover all court costs and attorney fees. A mix of relief and cold satisfaction washed over me. The fight was not just about money, it was about accountability, respect, and finally reclaiming control. After court, I walked back to my apartment, the city noise dim behind me. I called my banks and lenders to ensure the garnishments and fraud alerts were active. Each call was a small reinforcement, a brick in the wall I was building between myself and the people who had betrayed me. I felt a strange liberation, as if each action untangled the web they had spun around my life. Over the following weeks, I monitored the payments, confirmed the automatic transfers, and slowly began re-establishing boundaries with my parents and Sophia. Every phone call was measured, every visit controlled. I realized that true accountability wasn't just legal, it was behavioral. They had to live within their means, learn responsibility, and experience the consequences of their actions. I wasn't here to punish them, I told myself. I was here to protect my life, my finances, and my mental health. During this time, I also began rebuilding myself. Work became a sanctuary. I poured myself into projects and strategies that challenged me intellectually, and I noticed colleagues starting to recognize my resilience. I felt myself reclaiming autonomy in small ways: my schedule, my finances, my choices. Each day that passed without them manipulating me reinforced a new sense of self, capable, vigilant, and unafraid. And in the quiet moments, I let myself breathe. I wasn't just a daughter who had been deceived. I was a woman who had stood up, drawn lines, and demanded justice. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't thought possible. The fight wasn't easy, and it wasn't over, but for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. I had Rachel, my evidence, and most importantly, my own clarity of purpose. The weeks after the court ruling were strange, quiet but heavy. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly worrying about being manipulated or taken advantage of. I could feel the tension in my shoulders slowly easing, but the lessons lingered. I realized that the chaos with my parents had taught me something crucial. Boundaries weren't just rules, they were armor. Saying no wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Protecting myself didn't make me cruel, it made me strong. I started small. I set up a morning routine that prioritized me: exercise, journaling, planning my week. I organized my finances meticulously, double-checking every transaction and setting alerts. The feeling of control, something I had never allowed myself before, was intoxicating. I wasn't just recovering money, I was reclaiming my life. Every payment from my parents, every automatic garnishment, felt like a small victory, proof that consequences were real and that my efforts mattered. Slowly, I began to reopen communication with my family, cautiously, carefully. Coffee with Mom was first. We sat at a small cafe near my apartment, the city buzzing outside, and I could feel the years of tension in her stiff posture. "Holly," she said, stirring her coffee nervously, "I know I hurt you. I didn't know how else to handle things." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. I could see it flicker in her eyes, but I reminded myself, actions matter more than words now. We talked about boundaries, money, and expectations. I was firm. No more loans, no more unilateral decisions about my finances, and no more manipulation. Mom nodded, listening, occasionally asking questions, slowly showing signs of understanding. It was awkward at first, filled with pauses and careful words, but it was real. I felt a mix of relief and caution, aware that trust would take time to rebuild. Then came Sophia. She was older now, calmer, more aware. She had started working part-time at a local coffee shop, earning her own money to contribute toward the debt she had partially helped create. I watched her hesitation as she slid a few bills across the table. "I want to help," she said quietly. "I know it's not much, but I need to make things right." My throat tightened. This was accountability in action, and it gave me hope that she was learning from the mistakes of the past. I continued meeting Dad in the same careful, measured way. His pride was still wounded, and our conversations were tense, but I noticed a shift. He asked questions about budgeting, about repayment, about his own responsibilities. He wasn't asking to bypass accountability anymore. He was asking to understand it. And I reminded myself, rebuilding isn't forgiveness, it's guiding them to learn consequences. During these weeks, I also focused on myself. At work, I took on new challenges, proving to myself that my career, my growth, and my independence weren't tied to family approval. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, allowing myself laughter and normalcy that wasn't tainted by stress or deception. Each evening, I sat on my balcony, city lights glittering below, and let myself reflect. I felt lighter, stronger, and more capable than I had in years. And gradually, the family started to feel different. Mom managed her clients more responsibly, Dad took on a part-time weekend job, and Sophia showed maturity in school and work. Our coffee meetings became less tense, more conversational. We talked about neutral topics, shared stories, and even laughed at small things. The tension was still there, but it was tempered with mutual effort. I realized that healing wasn't instant, and relationships weren't restored by apologies alone. They required consistent, tangible change. By the end of those months, I could see it clearly. The lessons from betrayal, manipulation, and financial abuse had not broken me. They had armed me. I was no longer the daughter who absorbed every deception. I was the woman who demanded respect, insisted on accountability, and protected her own life. The past still lingered, but for the first time, I could look forward, knowing I had the strength to create healthy relationships, clear boundaries, and a life of my own making. A year later, I stood in my own apartment, sunlight streaming across the hardwood floors, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. I had stabilized my life, advanced in my career, and found a relationship built on trust and honesty. Marcus, steady and kind, had become not just a partner, but a collaborator in creating a life that felt safe, grounded, and full of possibility. I had built what I called my chosen family, friends and mentors who genuinely respected me, valued my boundaries, and celebrated me without expectation or manipulation. The changes in my parents and Sophia were gradual but undeniable. My parents had downsized their home, sold one of their cars, and learned to live within their means. Dad took a part-time job on weekends at a local hardware store. Mom worked evenings and weekends in real estate, focusing on clients she could actually manage without overextending herself. They were paying off the debt I had reclaimed, and each payment arriving on time reminded me that consequences were real and responsibility was possible. Sophia had transferred to public school, where she thrived in a more diverse, grounded environment. She worked part-time at a cafe, contributing to the debt she had partially helped create. I watched her grow more self-aware and accountable, proud that she had begun to internalize the lessons of honesty, effort, and responsibility. For me, the year had been about reclaiming myself as much as rebuilding any family ties. I had spent countless nights reflecting on what the betrayal had taught me. Love doesn't require sacrifice of your dignity, and boundaries aren't cruel. They're essential. I no longer allowed anyone, even my own family, to manipulate or use me. I had learned that freedom and self-respect were far more valuable than blind loyalty or obligation. Each day that passed in my well-ordered life reinforced that lesson, and I could feel my confidence and resilience solidifying like stone. Occasionally, I met with my parents over coffee, in neutral spaces, maintaining clear and healthy boundaries. Conversations were light at first, focused on everyday life, school, and neutral topics. Slowly, the tone shifted. We talked about responsibilities, budgeting, and rebuilding trust. My parents showed real effort. They listened, adjusted, and engaged without trying to manipulate me. Sophia and I also shared time together, sometimes over homework, sometimes just talking about music or plans for the weekend. These moments were small, but meaningful. They were evidence that change was possible when accountability met action. I also focused on myself. I nurtured friendships I had neglected while consumed with the drama of my family. I took long walks, journaled, and allowed myself laughter and quiet moments I hadn't permitted in years. Work became a place of empowerment rather than escape. Promotions and recognition weren't just professional milestones. They were proof that I could thrive independent of anyone else's approval. Standing on my balcony one evening, watching city lights twinkle below, I realized how far I had come. I had survived deceit, manipulation, and financial betrayal by those who should have protected me. I had stood up for myself, reclaimed my autonomy, and built a life grounded in integrity, respect, and genuine love. The empty ballroom, the fake party, the stolen deposits, what had once felt like the worst moments of my life, now seemed like the catalyst that allowed me to understand my worth. So, as the holidays approached, I want to say to anyone listening, choose yourself, protect your boundaries, and build relationships that honor your dignity. And to you, my listener, I hope this story inspires courage. May your Christmas be warm, joyful, and full of people who respect and value you. If this story resonated, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience, empowerment, and lessons learned from strong, determined women sharing their journeys. Thank you for listening, and may the year ahead bring growth, healing, and freedom for you too.